Well, welcome everybody. We've got a room full here. The students who are in the room are part of our Stocks and Finance Immersion Trip, which is an event where we get to give them an overview of what the financial industry is like and introduce them to a lot of wonderful people like the three of you. We initially were going to have 4 tonight, but we had one late cancellation, but that's okay. We've got enough to party, so we're going to be good. So what we promised everyone who attended this event, which may include some additional people who joined through Handshake, which is awesome. Welcome everybody. I would just ask that if you are joining us via Zoom, if you could just keep your cameras and microphones off, unless you want to ask a question. Please feel free to jump in at any point to do that. It will just help us kind of keep some things straight here. We're trying to run a hybrid program and it can be a little confusing. So we want to make sure that we keep things moving in the right direction. So without further ado, I'll get us started here. So here's what we promised you when you signed up for this event. We said that this event is going to feature panelists who are working in various areas of the finance industry and at a variety of stages in their careers. The discussion is going to center around attaining successful careers in finance, provide valuable insight into the industry, and learn about some paths that alumni have taken to get there. We're also going to have what I hope to be a very robust Q&A portion of the event today. So those of you in the room, prepare those questions. I'm going to come to you early in this one, and we'll make the most of this. So without further ado, I want to introduce our panelists. First, I'm going to introduce Charlie Durham. He graduated in 2001 with a policy studies degree. We have many policy studies majors in the room here tonight. Today, he's the Executive Director and Chief Compliance Officer for Sterling Capital in Charlotte, North Carolina. Welcome, Charlie.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Amanda Librizzi. She graduated in 2008 with a sociology degree. Today, she's the Executive Director and Branch Manager for UBS and their Nassau County branches. Welcome, Amanda.
Thanks for having me. Hi, everyone.
And last but certainly not least, Julio Burgos, who graduated this year, back in May 2021. He was an econ major, and today he is a financial product analyst for Bloomberg out of New York City. Welcome, Julio.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Julio, while I'm on you, I'm going to start with you. How did you end up? So you graduated? You're living the dream. You graduated and you're employed mere months later. How did you pull this off?
It took a lot of planning ahead. That's one thing that I kind of like always think back to me. And honestly, I actually took part, not of the Stock and Finance program, but I also took part of I think 2 different immersion programs. So I actually participated in one in New York City and one in Boston. So a lot of you guys are doing this now. I'm going to tell you, like, this is probably one of the best things you're doing in your college career, because the opportunities that you have when you meet with these recruiters and these firms, you're probably getting ahead of the game. A lot of people don't have access to these recruiters like you guys are going to be having in the next few days or weeks. But for me, like, no, I knew about Bloomberg since my freshman year. I did my research. I actually participated in 3 other programs at the Diversity Summit. I did the internship my sophomore year, which allowed me to get the internship for my junior year. And then after that, COVID happened. I was supposed to be in the office the entire summer, but I went virtual. That worked out perfect. And right after that summer, they offered me a full-time job. So honestly, right before my senior year, I already knew where I was going to be working. So I like to say I'm lucky enough, just because, COVID happened. A lot of companies aren't hiring. A lot of my friends still to this day don't have jobs, or like I'm still getting jobs now. But I'm thankful for that. So I'm glad you guys are participating in this and planning ahead.
Fantastic. Amanda, how about you? What was your journey from Syracuse to your current position?
Sure. So Syracuse graduated May of 2008, and I ended up starting at UBS in July of 2008. So I'm in my 14th year at the organization. I've had a number of different roles since I'm here. But even backing up to how I ended up here, when I had first started Syracuse, I kind of went in with the mindset that I wanted to take my LSAT and go to law school. And so that was initially what the plan was. I had the opportunity to have, and what's why I always think internships are really, really important. I had the opportunity to have a couple of internships experience that some people might have had where you're just kind of doing administrative work. And I decided I wanted to go down that path. So I did some research on a couple of training programs at larger institutions. I had interviewed actually initially for the UBS Graduate Talent Program, which is a 2-year rotational program here at UBS. I did not end up getting that role, but what it did give me was the opportunity to network a bit. And so I had met a couple of people through that interview process. I also had a relative who had worked at UBS who helped me further network. And so there was a role that had opened up. They were planning on, building out a new team that coming summer that I had the opportunity to interview for, and ended up doing something I knew nothing about. So I was a financial advisor recruiting analyst. So basically reaching out to financial advisors at the competition, telling them why UBS is such a great organization to be and bringing them over. But it was just interesting because, I think everyone will have a story today. There's no clear path as to how you get, to one place. And I'm sure we'll have plenty of time to take you through our career paths following our start. But as you'll see, it's kind of, never a straight line.
Yeah, I think that's totally true. We talk a lot about what's the most direct path you can take, but I think sometimes that journey, which isn't direct, ultimately maybe is the most direct path, because you have to discover those things about yourself along the way. Mm-hmm. Charlie, how about you? How did you travel all the way from Syracuse to Charlotte, North Carolina to work for Sterling?
Yeah, thank you, Matt. So I guess I'm the old guy on the phone. I graduated in 2001, so I'm 42. And I guess it would be my 20th anniversary this year, which I did not come up for, but I would have if the world was a bit more normal. So, I would say I was kind of maybe the 180 degrees opposite of Julio. I was on the rowing team at Syracuse. I was a policy studies major. I was, pardon the pun, but just trying to keep my head above water, with everything I had going on. So when I graduated, I wanted to travel. So I traveled for a bit. And then, like you guys are facing now, there's kind of a crisis. Well, there was 9/11. That turned, the world on its head. And I thought I wanted to go into, the Air Force or the Secret Service or, the FBI, CIA. So I had been applying to all of those, got a few, interviews. I was thinking about going to officers training school down in Alabama for the Air Force. But, it just, maybe just a change in perspective during that period of time, after I graduated, applied for a couple different jobs. And by the way, after 9/11, the economy, really took a hit, but that was also in the backdrop of the tech wreck, or when, all of the .coms initially, imploded. So it wasn't a great economy, but there's still jobs. I mean, people are hiring. It's just, you kind of have to be diligent and, go find them. So, it took me a while, a couple months to get some interviews, but I got, a bunch, and I ended up at Solomon Smith Barney at the time. Now it's Morgan Stanley Smith Barney, but I spent 5 years working with them. I guess the parent company is better known still, Citigroup. Then I moved over to AIG. This is all while working in Manhattan. Then I spent 8 years at Brown Brothers Harriman, private bank in Manhattan. And during that period, my wife had a great opportunity with her company to move to Charlotte. So my company let me work from Charlotte in their Charlotte office. And then more recently, about 3.5 years ago, I took an opportunity with Sterling Capital Management, an institutional investment advisor that is owned by Truist Bank, which is the new merger of SunTrust and BB&T. So that's my path, I guess.
But so when you were at Syracuse, you were a policy studies major. So how does a degree like that set you up for success in a field like like finance?
So I would answer it this way, perfectly. There's banks, investment shops, they're businesses. They're not all finance majors. So businesses have HR groups. Almost none of them are finance majors. They have systems and support, information technologies. Almost none of them are finance majors. Operations teams, almost none of them are finance majors. Compliance, legal. So you have to look at businesses like big companies, and big companies have different areas. Compliance is perfect for me. What is policy studies? It's the analysis of public policy as it starts to, as it, is created into law, and compliance is just that. I analyze policy as it's being made and make sure the businesses that I cover are complying with it, and not just new policy, but the policy that's been on the books for decades.
And Amanda, I think sometimes people might look at your degree, sociology, and say the same thing. How does this connect to the work that you're doing today? Do you feel like this degree is like prepared you, or do you feel like you took a total like left turn into finance?
Yeah, I think similar to Charlie, I think there's things that you pick up and take with you that are really relevant, within the financial services world that have absolutely nothing to do with what I think people assume financial services is all about, right? I think when you think about financial services, you think investment management, the markets, economics. You don't necessarily think about how much of it has to do with people, and particularly where I sit within the organization. That's my whole day, right? So I'm a branch manager of two of our businesses on Long Island in New York. I am responsible for growing the business and growing sales within our our local organization here through our financial advisors. But how do we do that? We connect with people and understanding what's important to our end client, personally important, what types of goals they have for their families long term, and then marrying solutions with that. You have to really develop relationships with those people and understand how to adapt your style to different types of people. And I think sociology obviously help, that kind of background is very, very helpful to that. It's what I find to be the most interesting aspect of the business. I think 90% of my day is spent more on talking about, how do we build better relationships with our clients? How do I build better relationships with my financial advisors to keep them motivated to continuing to grow the business? How do I keep them focused on building relationships with centers of influence that can introduce them to new business? And all of that is very people driven. Yeah. So little of our day, right? The solutions aspect of the conversation is the easy stuff, right? That's table stakes of what we do. The really, really hard stuff is building relationships and understanding how to do that.
Julio, do you agree that the people skills, the ability to speak with someone and build relationships with people is a major kind of like almost prerequisite to be successful in the work that you're doing?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's 50% of my job. I have to pick up the phone literally every day and walk a client through, pick up the phone and basically walk a client through one of our products.
Okay.
If you can't communicate effectively with a client, it just makes his job much harder. Both Charlie and Amanda made a great point. You don't have to be a finance major to me to work in finance. There's plenty of different departments within all of these big companies. Another thing is you can always learn the finance, but you can never teach someone how to maintain and build relationships. But that's all kind of like the person that comes things you learn in school. Like I think someone in your house or someone major in communication would be great in finance, because as Amanda mentioned, half of our job is really talking to clients and maintaining and thinking, always having a step ahead of the clients. Like you want to anticipate what is our clients going to need, and you don't need a finance background for that at all.
But you have a minor. What is your minor in?
My minor is strategic management. So when I went to Syracuse, my intended major was not like economics at all. I was actually started in IR, get into policy studies. Policy studies, we have a very interesting relationship with Path 101. A lot of you guys probably took it. So I decided at that same time I was taking econ. I was taking econ 203, and no, I like the idea of kind of like a mix of social science and finance. So I decided to stay with it. I never wanted to transfer Whitman because I knew inside of me that I wanted to do something related to like social science. So that worked perfect. But at the time, I said, you know what, like I want to at least get some exposure to finance. I just say, you know what, let me just minor in Whitman, and went ahead with strategic management. But again, econ is what helping me here, and like those social skills that you build, those courses that you take in Nassau and arts and sciences is what allowing me to do my job, the best I can.
You mentioned that the immersion trips that you participated in were extremely valuable for your time at Syracuse University. What precisely was it that you got out of those? A couple of years later, when you reflect on them, what was it about them that really helped you? Well, I don't know if I want to speak for you there. What did it help you decide, or what did it help you feel prepared for?
So when you participate in those kind of trips, you kind of get firsthand experience of the work environment. That's something that I recommend everyone to look into. Everyone can tell you I love my job, but if you don't really know what someone day to day looks like, you gotta know you're gonna like that for yourself. So, what those trips allowed me to do was kind of like ask those person like face to face, what is it that you do day to day? I got to see the office. We have very open space here. No one has an office at Bloomberg, which I think is pretty cool. You kind of find some of the things that you kind of find things you like, things you don't like. So you can just go ahead and start crossing things out. You can always take that back, and kind of like I'm a big planner. Like I realized, I'm not gonna say the company's name, but out of those companies, I said, hey, I like another company better than another one. I'm just gonna focus on Bloomberg and not the other one. Just because I got a more hands-on experience that I would never had if I never participated in the program. And another thing is the recruiters. Once the recruiter knows your name, you have a good first impression, they're not gonna forget that. The follow-up always important. I remember like after those trips, I'll literally email every recruiter back. I'll make sure I have my resume. Just because whenever I submit the application, they'll be like, oh, I remember this person. So they already have you in the back of their head. So that's definitely a heads up compared to some students that don't have the opportunity or just are not participating in this program. So definitely take advantage of that.
I love that. If you weren't just introduced to these people, but you took that relationship a little bit further to follow up with them afterwards to make sure that out of all the people that they could remember from those immersion trips, they were remembering you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perfect. So sounds like everything works out for you guys all the time. You're all set. You got these great jobs. You're in good shape. What kind of challenges do you face along the way? What have you had to overcome that maybe a student might not expect from someone who's achieved your level of success?
I'll maybe start if we're all good with that. I would say if you're working in finance, investments, whatever it would be, there's always the fear of what I don't know. So kind of getting over that fear is a challenging one. I actually, about 6-7 years after graduation, went back and got an MBA in finance to kind of, resolve that. But outside of it being just like another, kind of like accolade on my resume, I really don't think it was necessary because, I didn't really learn much, learning how to value a stock or a bond or a derivative. What Amanda and Julio said about, communication, building networks, understanding what people's jobs are, what their challenges are, what their objectives are. Those are the things that really go a long, long way. So, whatever trepidation there might be, in the room or on the camera with, not knowing how to value a stock, don't worry about it. I've never once in my career had to do it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Charlie, I would echo that. I think that my biggest thing over time, which I've learned how to overcome, and every so often it creeps up, is, and I think it's a real thing that a lot of people experience in their career, whether or not they have the credentials, quote unquote, that you need, is imposter syndrome. I think that for me, just as an example, I manage and am responsible for leading a business of 36 financial advisors who are highly successful dealing with ultra high net worth clients every single day. And I've never actually sat in their seat where I've been charged with going out and building a book of business on my own. Yet my experience here at the firm has clearly warranted me to sit in the seat that I do, right? And so I coach people doing things that I've never done. And so that's a struggle. I think that every so often, I get that imposter syndrome that creeps up. Like, what do I have to offer somebody, in many cases, who is half the age of the person sitting across the table from them? That person has been doing this for 25, 30, some cases 40 years, has a world of experience that I don't have, yet they look to me for some reason for guidance. And so I always have to kind of check myself with that. There's a reason why you're in the seat that you are, right? Other things I've done in my career have led me here and put me in a position to coach these people. But I think that's a constant thing, no matter where you sit in your, in your career, that you might feel at some point in time, am I really qualified to be doing the job that I'm doing?
Julio, how about you? I know you're early in your career, but the challenge get overcome.
Listen, they touch on other points, honestly, imposter syndrome as well. You're literally talking to a portfolio manager asking about swap. Like, I don't know what to swap. How do you price that? But it's all learning experiences. I like to say, about 5 months ago, I just graduated from Syracuse. I don't know half of the things I know now, but it's all timing and knowing that if you're willing to put in the work, you're never gonna be 100% sure of an expert in something. Someone else is gonna know probably the answer, but can you find like someone to give you that answer, or can you learn from that someone that knows the answer? I think those are all skills. But again, I come to work every day. I feel like half of the time I don't even know what the client is talking about, just because it's very very exotic, it could be very exotic instruments, or just some financial technicality that I just don't know about. But I always take that as a learning opportunity. Go home, either teach myself or find the person that knows, that's able to explain it to me. Able to keep that in the back of my head, because the questions will always come back. That's one thing; they'll always come back.
You have the ability to learn on the job of it. You're not expected to have it all figured out the day that you walk in the office.
100%. You learn something here up, and we learn something new every single day, which is the cool thing about it.
Great. So everybody, I'm going to call upon you. I'm going to ask one more question, and then you guys can line up and start to ask your questions of the panel. We'll do it like we did last night. Just come and take my seat and ask the panel directly, and we'll just roll from there. Sound good? Okay. So my question is, I've got all these qualified, bright young minds coming out of Syracuse University, and they're all going to be applying for these entry-level positions that they see in financial companies. And they're all going to have these great qualifications, high GPAs, a lot of things they've done outside of the classroom. What do they do to differentiate themselves from all the other bright young minds that are going to be coming to companies like yours?
I was thinking about that question because I thought it'd be asked. You're probably looking at websites and job postings, and there's a bit of frustration that seeps in there because, one, you may not hear anything back. Two, you might hear something back, but the job is not there. Here's a suggestion. Go out to LinkedIn. If you're not on LinkedIn, get on LinkedIn. Go search the company or companies and do a lot. And some senior folks at the company, the HR leaders, human resource leaders, If there's a specific area of the company you want to work in, operations, systems, finance, investments, whatever, go look around and see who these people are. Their contact information's there. Just email them. Short, simple, send a resume, just, maybe say something about their company. You will get responses. There are a lot of jobs out there that aren't necessarily posted on boards. And oh, by the way, I think something Amanda said, the imposter syndrome. The people with experience fear the people without experience because you're a lot cheaper than we are. And companies these days do want to decrease, expenses. And us old people making a lot of money, we're expensive. They can hire a few of you versus one of us.
Charlie, I would say that LinkedIn is probably the most powerful tool that you have. The second most powerful tool you have is a network of Syracuse alumni to reach out to. So I'll give you a couple of quick examples. So one, to Charlie's point, that happens to me at least once or twice a week, which I welcome. So I'll get, a post, someone send me a LinkedIn message, just to connect. And or if you Google my name, you'll find my UBS website, my contact information all there. So I'll get emails that way. I had a great person that reached out to me earlier this, I guess last week now. I spoke to him yesterday and he reached out to me about summer internship opportunities. But when talking about it, it seems like he's graduating in the spring of this year. He's actually taking his coursework remotely and lives locally to our offices. And there is an internship opportunity that we have now. And so I've connected him with a financial advisor. And so they're able to now have a conversation around not just, the internship that they have throughout the rest of the school year, but potentially it could lead into a full-time role for them. So that's a great example of, you don't know who you're reaching out to. And to Charlie's point, right, there might be a role that's not even posted that might be able to be shared with you. But, you've connected me with a couple of people directly through the alumni organization to speak to, kind of post in their post-graduation time when they're trying to figure out what they want to do, that I've been able to, connect with others. But I also get reached out to via LinkedIn from, people who are graduating from Syracuse. And the note typically will just say something like, hey, I saw you went to Syracuse, to see that you work at UBS. I might have an interest in working at UBS as well, but do you have 5 minutes to schedule a phone call with me to talk about it? And every single time I've received one of those notes, I've always taken the call because who do I want to help? I want to help everyone who went to, my same school that I came from, that's given me such a great foundation for success. So definitely utilize those two kind of networking abilities that you have.
I agree, 100%. LinkedIn and Syracuse network. I used to do it myself. Listen, you miss every shot you don't take. But I used to go on LinkedIn, literally and sometimes it wasn't not even that I wanted to apply to a job, but I actually I had a genuine interest in the person, like day-to-day job. Like, okay, that job sounds interesting. I want to see what they do. Most of the time, Syracuse alum will respond to you, like 100%. I don't think I had never had someone respond to me. And also, it's a little things. You definitely want to distinguish yourself from everyone else. You'd be surprised. A lot of people don't do that. But Syracuse is a very interesting culture. Here at Bloomberg, there's 4 of us from Syracuse that started together in my class. I had a class of 20, so you really imagine that. Syracuse is a really good name. You guys need to leverage that. Like, we say Syracuse, people know what you're talking about. So leverage the network, the resources there, and it'll take you very far.
Awesome. Get some great advice. Who has our first question? Come on up, Emma. You're actually speaking to that microphone up there. Just going to project a little.
Hi, everyone. Oh, I think I'm on mute. 1 second.
No, you're good. You're good.
I'm not? Oh,
Yeah.
they can hear me?
You're good. We
Okay,
can hear you.
sorry. Hi, everyone. My name's Emma. I'm a junior studying economics. And my question is like particularly for Julio, but I'm open to like any advice any of you have. So I'm a junior, like I mentioned. I'm going abroad this spring, so I don't really have an opportunity to get an internship like my junior summer or whatnot. So I'm feeling like I'm a little behind in the interview process for internships and just like the opportunities for like getting a job right out of school. So I'm wondering, you know, what recommendations would you have for someone like me who maybe doesn't have an internship lined up and is feeling a little behind? Like, what can I do to make myself competitive with those students who, I guess, have like had those experiences?
First thing I'll say, don't feel that you're behind. Everyone is running their own race. You shouldn't feel you're falling behind. There's still plenty of time. You're still fall of the junior year. Applications are rolling now. One of the things that I recommend is as well, you can still apply to these jobs and still interview from abroad. Like I remember I went abroad actually the fall semester of my junior year, and I was interviewing as well. Because that time I haven't heard back from Bloomberg. I was interviewing abroad for Morgan Stanley at the time. So you are gonna have companies that are flexible. So don't feel that you're gonna be abroad. You're missing out because you're not United States. You can interview. Some of these recruiters will definitely make time for that. And also, I don't know if you guys know, but a lot of companies are hiring a lot of people now. It's a very tight labor market. A lot of people are leaving different companies because COVID and stuff. So I definitely feel that you're gonna be kind of set up pretty good in the next coming months and year for you to find what it is that you want to do and apply to these jobs. But definitely have a plan. That's one thing I'm gonna let you know. You got to set a plan and make it kind of fits whatever you think it could go in that plan is, and continue to talk to people and participate in a program like these as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
And Charlie, you're also welcome to comment if you have anything, but no worries.
Yeah, I would just say, what a cool story to differentiate yourself. To go back to Julio's point, then interviewing for either a full-time position or an internship while you're abroad. I mean, that's a really cool story to be able to tie in to that interview.
Yeah, I had the opportunity every year to participate in our super days for our graduate talent program, both for the internship portion of it as well as the 2-year rotational. And I think each of the last 6 or 7 years since I first started doing it, we always have a couple of folks that I interviewed during the process that are studying abroad. And I agree with you, Charlie, those are always the fun ones to talk to because they're having great experiences. They get to speak to what it's like to be in a foreign country, right, and deal with both their coursework, but also take advantage of all that there is to see and do, and how they're kind of juggling the two, things together. So that's very common and definitely, a different type of world experience that you're gaining that you can bring to the conversation.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Hi, I'm Victoria. I'm a freshman and I'm majoring in environment, sustainability, and policy. Is that right?
Yep.
And so I was just wondering, as a freshman, there's not a lot of opportunity for internships as most of the internships are more geared for juniors or seniors. So I am planning to study abroad over the summer for like 3 weeks right after school ends. And the program, if I get into it, it would be sustainability in finance. So I was wondering if the internships that I have applied for don't work out, what do you suggest as a freshman that I do to prepare myself?
I would just say you're probably in the hottest area of finance there is. ESG investing, environmental, socially responsible, and governance investing is the hottest thing out there. Like I'm literally day over day working on the development of an exchange traded fund that actively trades ESG stocks. So there is a ton of information out there and jobs out there on ESG. So I would say familiarize yourself with what is going on in the industry. You could literally just go into Bloomberg.com, your friend Julio's company. There's a ton of information and learn about it. You don't necessarily need an internship to learn about a topic above and beyond your coursework. So, I mean, that's what I would say, but the others may have some better ideas.
Charlie, you're spot on. Like, and just so that UBS announced last year that sustainable investing is their preferred solution for clients. We have one of the largest in sustainable investing, focused organizations globally. So there's lots of great information out there that all of the big firms are putting out. That's Charlie's point. You can learn a lot just by doing research, and those are great kind of conversations that you could bring to future internship, interviews, and just preparing you for those. But you're perfectly positioned for what the future of the business looks like.
100%. Charlie and Amanda are 100% correct. We have an entire function just for ESG, and we get a lot of questions on that on the desk. So very, very hot stuff to know about. So you're definitely in good hands.
I had one other thought. If you're that motivated and you can't necessarily get an internship, go out and try to build your own ESG model and apply it to the stock market. What companies would you select? What companies would you not select? And why? How would you grade them? And just that thought process when you get into an interview setting is worth $1 million. Like, they would value that so much, it's ridiculous. And if you build something good enough, you might be able to make $1 million or $10 million off your model.
Okay, thank you.
One more thing, I think you could even use, I don't know if you guys are aware, but you guys have access to the Bloomberg terminal and the Whitman lab for free. There's tons of information in there. So I highly recommend a lot of you guys do, one day if you're free, just go into the Whitman building. They have a lab, and they have, I believe, like 10 terminals. You can go up and just create an account, and you can literally just see this all in the terminal, which is so cool.
Great, thank you.
Anybody else ready? All right, keep thinking of them. I'll go back in. That example that you give, Charlie, is something that we had a lot of students have success with when COVID hit and suddenly everybody didn't have an internship anymore. So it was, I can't take advantage of what I thought I already had. What do I do here? And that was kind of like homegrown internships were a great option for people when things got really tough and opportunities dried up.
Yeah, I mean, an internship, is more about the development of you, not necessarily finding a job. Like, you could be offered the job at that one company, but it's really about, developing you. So in the absence of, an internship, whether you didn't get one, you're going abroad, you're a freshman or a sophomore, do the practicum type things. Like, I was talking about building the ESG model. Just do those things. I mean, break out Excel, break out Google and start working on it. Just start building, from the S&P 500 or the Dow Jones or whoever, start looking at these companies and start saying, is it environmentally conscious? Is it socially responsible? Do they have good governance? You don't need to, rely upon what other people's, metrics of that are. Create your own. You can then go back to what Morgan Stanley's, rankings are, or Bloomberg or whatever. But it's that kind of stuff where you're literally doing what these people are going to be hiring you to do or have current teams to do. And if you're doing that on your own and you have maybe some good ideas to bring to them, it's worth its weight.
Yeah, like that action-oriented proactiveness that would come across in the interview is much more powerful, to Charlie's point, than the names of the firms that you had internships with. And particularly in the last couple of years, right? It's been really difficult to find, the traditional internships because they just haven't existed due to COVID. So being able to show that you're proactive during that time period, and you took action to further develop your skills in an area that you want to kind of grow and have a career in, I think is definitely really powerful.
We talked about a study abroad and those as a result of those questions as well. We talked about the Bloomberg terminal, which you can actually obtain a full-blown certification in here at Syracuse University. And then Julio, you also highlighted your past experiences with immersion trips. But Charlie and Amanda, I wanted to ask you, what experiences at Syracuse University outside of the classroom do you feel helped shape you to be the person that you are today?
Yeah, I was really active in my sorority. So I was in AE5 when I was at Syracuse. And I had a couple of different leadership roles within the sorority over the course of the 4 years. So I was on the executive board. 1 year as, I think, the secretary for the executive board. I spent 2 years as the recruitment chair. And I actually think like that role in particular helped prepare me for a lot of what I actually do today. And so it teaches you, people skills, right? How do you again meet, when you go through Rush, right, you're meeting hundreds of individuals who want to learn about your sorority, what makes it different than, the 3 or 4 others that they saw that day, as they're making a decision, right? So you have to become a really good marketer on why this house versus others. You have to be able to, as the recruitment chair in particular, where I rotated through every room and met with almost every candidate that came through. And so, again, developing that skill set of how to develop, conversation with a complete stranger, which definitely benefits me in my day-to-day today. And then also adapting to different personality types and styles. So it's interesting, like at the time, it was just more of a fun thing to do. But I kind of go back to that regularly over the course of the last 13, 14 years in my career.
So how'd you get that position?
I was elected through the sorority. So I was, nominated by my peers. And then I guess I did a good job 1 year. So they put me in charge of it again the second year.
Yeah. And not to take away that accomplishment of that election, but relatively low bar for joining, right? Like it was kind of like, I'll do that. You raised your hand, right?
Yeah.
Where other people didn't. And then that opportunity presented experiences that you're still using.
Yeah, for sure.
How about you, Charlie? What'd you do when you were a student at campus? Just the stuff that's appropriate for this panel, please.
Yeah, I went out in M Street a lot. And Armory. So I was on the rowing team, right? That's like 20, 30 plus hours a week. So I was constantly tired. So I really got to figure out how to juggle, 2 big priorities. And again, I didn't come out, running, sprinting into my, first, Fortune 500, job. I kind of came out, hit the ground, had to travel, relax, recoup, and all that. But the other thing that I did between my junior and senior years, I had an internship with a nonprofit lobbyist on the Hill in DC, and I went to go see and hear and take notes at congressional meetings for a summer. And I don't want to discourage anybody from doing internships, but what that taught me is I didn't want to do that for a career. I thought it was horrible. The inefficiencies of big government, I think pushed me really to the efficiencies of, kind of corporate USA. So that kind of taught me what I didn't want to do.
I think that process of elimination is extremely important in deciding. Okay, last chance for questions. Anybody got one? Renita, come on over.
Hi, my name is Anissa, and I'm a sophomore, and I'm also majoring in econ, and I'm also planning to major in environmental sustainability policies. And so, because I think it's important how, like, with today's conversation of like sustainability and econ and trying to match up with those models and stuff. But then my question was, how important would it be right now as a student to get skills on data analytics and programming, like Python or R programming, because it's not necessarily something I want to do, but it is something I could look at if that means it would give me an edge. So yeah.
Just my 2 cents. I would get that certification in Bloomberg. if you want to be in finance. That's going to carry a lot of weight. I'd also maybe, learn how to code a bit in Excel, write formulas and build some pretty good Excel documents. When you actually go into programming, you're not going to be doing programming in a company really unless you're working in IT and systems. Like if I need somebody to build me an application, I'm going to go to my systems group, or we're going to go buy the application from somebody. So, if that's what you want to do, great. I'd probably use those man hours, woman hours, and do things that I think you're going to use more.
Yeah, I would agree. It's really specific to where you want to be within, right? Financial services is a really broad, kind of industry. And so there's a lot of different places where that might be applicable. And particularly, in today's world, AI and data analytics has definitely become a much more, large piece of what's driving kind of the behind the scenes of decision making. So again, if that's something that interests you, then it makes 100% sense. But I would just think a little bit about if that's the direction you want to go, then invest the time. But if not, it's not necessarily going to give you an edge just on like the sales side, as an example.
Yeah, 100%. Just thinking about it strategically. Do you want to do that, like full time? Is something you want to focus on? Sure, go ahead and do it. It's definitely going to benefit you. And you can learn it. You don't have to be an expert on it. But if you're exposed to it, it definitely helps. Like I knew it when I was at Syracuse, but it's not the one that I'm doing now. But you learn over time as well. That doesn't mean, like, let's say you're a sophomore now, you don't do it in Syracuse. That doesn't mean you can never do it after you graduate. You can always pick it up afterwards on the job, on your free time, if you're willing to put in the work. But they mentioned a great point. If it's not something you plan on doing full time, you don't have to focus on it. But if you you see the benefit of it, having a little bit some exposure, go ahead and do it.
Thank you.
So let me actually add this. There's another thing that so Finra is the Financial Industry Regulatory Authority. So Amanda and her branches, they don't like the day that Finra walks in and examines them. It's the examiner, it's the rulemaking body. They have a group that also does the licensing, right? So the Series 7 exam, you guys may have heard that gives you the ability to buy and sell stocks and bonds. One of the things that they did really recently within the past couple of years was historically you needed to have a firm like UBS or Truist sponsor you for that. They did away with it. So now in college, you can study for, it's called the SIE, and it's like the Security Industry Examination or something along those lines. And you can get actually that license walking in the door at a company, which makes you a lot more desirable. Amanda, I'm assuming, and I'm going to kind of put this to you, if a college student walks in with their SIE exam, I'm assuming you're going to think that's a pretty good thing.
Oh, for sure, right? It's a prerequisite for all the other licenses. And again, goes back to some comments that we made a little bit earlier around showing initiative and being action oriented around what's important to you in developing your career. And I guess to Charlie's point, really anything you can do that helps you take a step on your own in the direction of where you want to go is a differentiator coming to an interview versus kind of waiting to be told to take those steps when you could have maybe thought of them on your own. But again, it goes back to figure out kind of where you want to be and then spend and invest your time on those things that you can do that get you in that direction. Don't necessarily, just take exams or go through training courses on things just to have them as resume builders, because they might not be relevant to the person that's sitting on the other side of the interview.
Thank you. Yeah, I also have one more question, just in general, because I'm an international student, and so it's not necessarily easy for companies to want to vouch for me and take me on. Well, maybe jobs they would, because that's a more permanent thing, but just for temporary things, so summer internships and stuff, companies don't necessarily want to have me be there just because answer that, but I was wondering in general, what does that look like in your companies, in your individual companies?
Well, I would just say this. One of the other initiatives that's huge in corporate USA right now is called DEI, diversity, equality, and inclusion. We're actually working on a fund that focuses on that as well. But, it really is making corporations look at the structure of, who they're hiring, from race, creed, pretty much everything. I think it's even like, veteran status, but different companies define it, but there's more value in, kind of a diverse candidate set. So I don't know your experience. I know that my company, and I think we've got like 70,000 people, they wouldn't shy away in the least in, offering you a temporary or full-time employment. I mean, that's not even, they probably look at it more as a benefit these days.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't have enough kind of experience locally to opine on, what we would or how we would handle that, or if that's even a factor in decision making around internships. But what I would say is that most of, or really all of the major financial services institutions are global, and so there might be internship opportunities that might be near home that get you in the door at an organization that if long term you want to be in the US, that can give you a kind of a long-term foot in the door there. But I don't have enough experience to speak to, how we would handle local US internships.
Yeah, me neither. I myself, I've been in the job for a few months, but I think this is a great question. And Matt, correct me, pretty sure they're meeting probably some recruiters during the program. I think this would be a great question you could actually bring up to a recruiter during the time that you meet with these companies. But every company is different. It's good that you do your research as well. There's a lot of companies that do sponsor a lot of international students, so you should definitely keep those on your radar. Do your research, and again, just reach out to those recruiters.
One other thought there. So I'll just speak for my company, Truist. I think we're top 5 or 6 banks in the United States now. There's a large section of our homepage website on the corporation talking about DEI initiatives. If you were to, apply or reach out via LinkedIn, use some of the kind of, tools and tricks we're talking about and reference that, I see that your company has this as a priority. I'm, looking for X, Y, and Z, whether it's, sponsorship or, whatever. I think tying those two things in could definitely lead, a pretty long way to getting some positive responses.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Anita. Okay, we're almost at time, so I'm gonna pitch the last question to you. You've given a lot of good advice throughout this, but what if you could go back in time and give younger Charlie, younger Amanda, and younger Julio some advice? What would you say to them as a student at Syracuse University?
I'd say be a little bit more prepared when you graduate. But you live and learn. I think I really wouldn't have changed anything with my career, the successes, the failures, etc. I wish I had a Julio hanging around a little bit more that keep me organized and keep me on the straight and narrow. But you're gonna walk your career path, and I would just say be a hard worker, be dedicated. Doesn't mean that you can't go out and have fun and socialize and party and whatever else, but work hard and make a career a priority. Don't put it second or third. Spend a lot of time on it. I luckily did that, and I think it really paid dividends.
mentioned this, at the beginning of the meeting, but, like I said, there's no one straight path to getting to where you go. In my almost 14 years with UBS, I've had, 7 or 8 different job titles that kind of, every time I turned, there was just an opportunity that didn't necessarily come from me kind of searching the job board, but it was by prioritizing relationships that I was building with people throughout the course of my career, that when something came up or something that they had seen me do that they think could be applicable to a role that they were hiring for, or something that they had heard was coming open and they thought I'd be a great fit for, I was their first phone call. And so really fostering relationships, I think, is really important at any stage of where you are in your life, but particularly in navigating your career. Because there's a number of people that I can call today as sponsors, mentors that either, I could have worked with day one in my career, and we've never really crossed paths, professionally again, but I've kept a close personal relationship that I've gone to for advice as I've made decisions along the way. So prioritizing relationships, I think, is really, really important. Like I said, is while you're navigating your career, and just trust your gut. I don't know that I really had it all well thought out. Like I kind of just, I thought I might want to do something in financial services. I had a great opportunity to get my foot in the door at UBS, and it kind of took me in a whole bunch of different directions that have, been very fulfilling. And to a point Julio made earlier, what I love about it today, and I think I'll continue to love about it hopefully in the next, I have a lot of time in this business, but is, how different each day is, how much I learn each day. And I come in open-minded every day, looking for what I can learn today, because it's what keeps me feeling challenged, what keeps me excited. You're at work way more than you're ever home, right? I have 2 little kids under 3. And my husband went to Syracuse too, so we've been together for a long time, that I'd love to be able to spend more time with. But it's the reality of, life, right? I spend a lot more time here. And so you have to really find ways to enjoy what you're doing. But prioritizing the relationships, trusting your gut, and making decisions along the way, because it's typically right. And making sure that you can find fun in the day and ways to continue to learn.
All right, Julio, you get the last wise words of the evening.
Hey, I don't have the experience that Charlie and I have in the industry. I'm honestly here learning as well. I only have a few months in the job. I graduated a few months ago, but one thing that I'll say, man, listen, I know those 4 years at Syracuse, I probably would never trade it for nothing in the world. I had a great time there. I wouldn't change at all differently. One thing that I'll tell you, build a network. I can literally name you like all of my friends that I met through involvements or classes, group projects. To this day, I'm really tight with them. I can literally name you. They all work in New York City, all over the country, and those are the people you can always rely on. There's friends that sometimes I'll tell you, hey, it's a job opening. We already have it in. It's a great job to have those relationships. Yeah, you could always have fun. Charlie mentioned I used to have a lot of fun at Syracuse, but I knew when it was time to work, I'll stay focused and plan out. One thing is as well, listen, there's gonna be times where you're gonna be hearing people. I see this with the LinkedIn post. People gonna be celebrating their jobs, the internship, and you're gonna feel like, hey, I feel behind because I don't have a job, I don't have an internship. Don't compare yourself to those people. And the reason why I say that is because everyone else have different interests. You don't know what they interest. You have a completely different goal that they have. So your story do not align at all. You could often get caught up in that. So don't compare yourself to that. Have fun. And honestly, one thing that I would do differently is probably start a business if I was in college. I know Blackstone is pretty big in Syracuse, and I wish it was a little bit more developed by the time that I was there. And I actually put more time into that, but I was so involved, and it was just college just got carried away. But keep doing this what you're doing now.
I think you did all right, and I think you got enough time ahead of you that can happen. So And don't be shy about coming back to Syracuse to draw on some of those resources that we have here, because you guys gave us so much tonight. Thank you so much for your time and your time away from your families and all the knowledge that you shared. And thank you so much for signing up to just support our students in this way. It's a huge gift to them. And I can tell you that the people in this room appreciate that in a way that not every student does. So thank you so much for taking the time to do that. And I hope you got a lot out of it as well.
Really appreciated it, Matt. Thank you for putting it on.
Absolutely. All the best. Go Orange.